So Commissioners Mike, Norm, Kayla, Floor. I thought I saw somebody else. Okay. All right. So.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Can you see the screen okay?
Yes, I totally can.
Perfect.
Are you guys fine if we dig right into the questions? I mean, with all due respect to our group agreements, I think we got it. So let's start on the questions. That'll take the most time. So based on the legal presentation, the parameters as you know, you're understanding them in this moment, what should the roles and responsibilities be? How can this be framed for the most efficiency and effectiveness within the parameters of law? So let's start with a wish list. Let's say, okay, I had a wish list in my head before the meeting, and some of the things that are coming off my list, I really still want those. Or say, tell me what you want and like, and what you don't like, and that at least can be a starting point. Let somebody jump off with that.
Well, I'll go ahead. I had hoped that we could create a safe space where people who had either complaints or suggestions about law enforcement could make those. I am a firm believer that the current system in place is fine, it's working, it's above board. But if you have a complaint about a police officer, the current system is you report that to the police department. And I just think the optics of that is not good, and maybe the reality. So create a safe space where people can initiate suggestions, concerns about police without perhaps feeling frozen out because they don't want to go to the police to make that suggestion.
Absolutely. The intimidation factor.
It could be, and I would assume that there is some of that.
What I think this board will do is, lifting the veil of the secrecy and really showing that having this public forum for everybody to come in and talk about the issues, I think will establish trust, because nothing will be off the table. Well, within the legal constraints, of course, but I think just lifting the veil of what's going on, because this is one of the things that has always been asked. How does our police department doing? Are they really doing this racially motivated things? And so therefore, I think this will be a step towards the right direction.
And what did you guys think of the presentations where they talked about, this increased awareness, community understanding police, police understanding community? How can that be addressed in roles and responsibilities?
This is Norm. I'm kind of going along the same thing that Mike and Flo said. What really kind of stuck in my mind, which has me thinking as an option, the National City, the captain made a statement that kind of piqued my curiosity, is the availability of the police department there to answer the question. I'm not saying that's the pattern I want to go with, but it seemed like there was a conduit there. They had the chief, they had internal affairs, they had really a conduit to go to. Because that's the whole part, accessibility. Again, I'm not saying that's a plan, but it just really, it gives a forum that people know they can come to. Now, the confidence of getting people to come to this, that's the big thing to them be coming forward. And the last thing I want to, I think that we have to be really careful to stay away from the things where there's responsibilities allowed legally to do. I'll address on a personal. I've dealt with bargaining units in the private sector, and contracts and stuff can be very touch and go, grievances and things like that. So you got to be real careful that you stay away from those things unless it's really clear. So that's all I have at this time.
Okay. Did anyone else want to address this? Once again, I'm calling it a wish list of roles and responsibilities. Anybody else have something to add before we take on the next two? And I'm not rushing you guys, just asking.
Just one more thing. I think the list that was already put together was really great. Just another thing is keeping up to date with sort of the best practices across the country and just sharing out what activists and others think are the best practices and why, and kind of giving evidence or anecdotes in line with being a conduit, like Norm said, to just sort of translate why people are saying what they're saying.
If I may say one more point real quick here, we can have chair. I found it interesting from a standpoint how that commission in National City had access to all the files. Now, yes, there has to be some confidentiality they're required to hold on to receiving these files, not like a little more what steps they go on that, because they are seeing the actual files. It's like a closed session on a committee. It's confidential.
I was thinking that that was because there is the review, right? I was thinking that there had already been decided on, or there's a
Well, like you said,
judgment.
correct me if I'm wrong, they were saying they could go into there on certain days and actually, except taking the actual file out of the police station, they could review them right there and get all the facts, names, and I'm saying there has to be some kind of confidentiality. So they don't go outside to the public at the proper time when it becomes public knowledge. But there's a lot of stuff that could be put out in the public, which could be hazardous.
I wondered about that too, whether the names were covered up or I don't know, redacted files or totally exposed.
Yeah.
I wondered the same thing.
Maybe something that we can follow up on.
Okay. So let's see, what responsibilities should the advisory board have to the community? So we go now, we heard communication from one of our guests. So along those lines, what are some of the things that this body should be aware of that, that needs to be their obligation or their commitment to the community? What do you guys think?
It just doesn't stop at the commission. If the community comes forward to the commission, it has to be mandatory or whatever we put on, that it gets forwarded onto the proper channels, and whoever made the request, they get response back or at least address their questions.
I was thinking that this could be similar to a jury, right? That, everybody has your own biases and prejudices, but the advisory board will have to really just address what has been presented to them and make and have an open mind during the discussions.
Would the meetings be public?
I think so.
I agree. Transparency, if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This might go without saying, but responsiveness and just following up on things in a timely manner.
That's important.
Yes. So let me poke the bear a little bit. How do you make the community feel comfortable with this? How do you build that in?
It doesn't come overnight, I'm sure. We have to build it. And like I think Shana was saying, we have to know each other. And that's only the time that you can build trust.
Yeah, I think actions will speak louder than words. Although, at the end of the day, there's always someone who's not going to like what you do if they don't like the outcome that they had hoped for. But if you can still develop a trustworthy process that is transparent with open meetings and allow for robust public participation, I think that's possible. And hopefully over time that trust grows.
That's good stuff. What's our last question? Or did anyone have more to add about the, taking it to the community, and what did you have some other built-in suggestions for that? Okay, let's go to number 3, membership considerations. The models, we saw a lot. I mean, some places wanted at least one person with a JD. Some people, some cities wanted certain levels of experience. As you guys talked about, reflective of the community. It's all on the table. What do you guys think in terms of who would you want to see? Describe the configuration you guys are comfortable with.
I think I like the one that Portland has for people to also be involved in the community. I think it's important that the person has representing all these groups of people, but also being involved in the community is one way for them to really know what's out there.
I'm not positive on this one, so I'd be curious for everyone else's thoughts as well, but some type of baseline understanding of racial equity and social equity might be a consideration.
Well, definitely that's part of the training. Most of the time when we have commissions, they get a little training, even for city council members when they join. I'm sure the planning commission, they have also that training, or at least orientation. Right,
We did.
Norm?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
And we have contact with other planning commissions, so we got that training.
That's very good,
representation, but the only part we have to be careful about is that we have appointments by the council. And I'll use this word lightly, like we want to have representation of all ethnic groups and things, but we got to make sure when appointments are made that they don't get, like, gee, that's a mayor's choice, that's a fixed load or whatever. And that's a tough question. There is no way to avoid that to some degree, but you do want across the board, so you see that divergency across. Because you can't advertise legally saying that we want X amount of one race, X amount of another, but you do want that representation. That's a tough one to do it legally without stepping on toes.
So what's the workaround? Is it that you look at the city as districts and you get representation of different areas, or you guys tell me?
My feeling personally is, having been with commissions for a lot of years, is just getting the applicants from all cross sections to apply. I don't know how that works, how we can make it where we get representation of all groups. That's the open-ended of my statement.
Brody, you have something to share?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to what we did, which was because we ran into this of where you want to have that diversity, but at the same time you don't want to specifically have anything that could be perceived as tokenism. And one is have a lot of questions where you have people talk about how they can be an advocate for a certain community. But so you're kind of rewarding people's either their lived experience or their advocacy. Which a lot of times can get to the same point where you can look at people who are, say, different advocates, because a lot of people will advocate for their own communities. But it also allows you to get but it kind of focuses in on that experience as opposed to identity. So it's a little safer from claims of tokenism or that it's not based in merit, although you really want to be careful about how you define merit, because that can be defined in very exclusionary ways. And a lot of times, at least what was a priority for us, is trying not to get necessarily everyone based on education or status, because a room full of 8 diverse highly paid lawyers is still a room full of highly paid lawyers. And so you want to make sure to get get the diversity within marginalized communities, as well as the diversity between them, if that makes sense.
Does. That's good stuff. So looking at the recommendations to the side of the notes, anything on there that you guys wanted